There's a bread in Jewish culture that's called challah. And this one is actually an egg bread. So you may have seen it in the store or may have seen it around. It's in some ways it's similar to a brioche in the sense that it's eggy and it's got a lot of texture to it, and it's leavened. So I'm going to try making a version of it at home. I've bought some at the store. Some are really good. There's a couple that are not so good. So I'm going to try making a version of it here, and let's see how it comes out. This is my first time making this recipe, so I'm kind of playing it by ear a little bit, and we'll see how it comes out. I've made other breads before, but this is the first time I'm doing this one. So I'm going to start with yeast. I need to bloom my yeast. Typically, you put this packet of yeast in a 1/4 cup of warm water. I want more liquid for my dough, so I'm going to use about a cup of water in here and put my yeast in. So I'll just use the package of yeast. The yeast needs to bloom, that's why the warm water, and it needs to actually be activated. So you need the sugar so that it actually has something to feed on, and that's how it comes to life and starts to actually get this foaminess that you want when you have your bread that's cooking. So I'll give that a stir, and I'll set it aside for about 10 minutes, and that's it. And we'll take a look at it when it's ready. Now, on the other side, I want some dry ingredients. I want some flour, some sugar, some salt, and then I'm going to use a little oil and a little bit of my yeast, and that's it. That's all that goes in here. So I'm going to go ahead and put 4 cups of flour in here. Now, I read a couple of recipes. Some called for more than 4 cups. I think 4 cups was about the right amount. My plan was to use the lower amount, start to let the product come together, to let the dough form, and if I needed more, I'd add more. I figured that was probably a good way to do it and kind of work up to it a little bit. You have to beat the dough a little bit and get the right texture to it anyway. So I go ahead and put my 4 cups in here, and then I'm going to turn my attention to the sugar. Now the sugar is about a 1/4 cup of sugar. You want this to be a slightly sweet bread, so you go ahead and put a 1/4 cup of sugar in there. I'm a little under, but I think that's probably about right. Next up, I'm going to put my salt. I need about 2 teaspoons of salt or so to kind of get this recipe going and give it a little flavor. The salt just enhances on the overall flavor of it. When you have the eggs in there, it's going to kind of bring out the egginess just a little bit and make it just a little bit better. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on my stand mixer for a moment just to get everything kind of incorporated and mixed together. That's all I want to do. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my oil. I want about a 1/4 cup of oil, something that doesn't have a lot of flavor to it. I think almond oil is a great choice for this. Could try a couple of different oils, but about a 1/4 cup. And I know I made a little bit of a mess here on the counter, but I will clean it all up. Sometimes that's the way it works. As far as eggs, I want a total of 3 eggs in my dish. I'm going to go ahead and two complete eggs, and then separate 1 egg and keep the egg white to do a wash at the end to make sure it's nice and golden brown at the top, but put the other yolk in here. So I'll use a total of 3 eggs in here. So there's the 2 eggs that I put in, and I'll go ahead and separate out my 1 egg just in a cup that I'll use later. So I'll just go ahead and separate it out, and I'll put the egg yolk into the batter. Now, once I get the other egg yolk in here, that's when you want to start mixing it. Now, I use my dough hook for this because the dough hook is the right one to start mixing up the batter completely. You want to get a nice glutinous type of thing going on. So the important thing is to just beat it for a while until it all comes together and incorporates in a way that actually seems like it comes together. You're going to have this dough ball that's kind of almost like touching bubble gum in a way, soft bubble gum, where it's sort of soft, doesn't really stick to your fingers, maybe a little bit, but not a whole lot. And then you're going to use it from there. So now I've got my yeast that's been bloomed. You can see it's nice and foamy, and that's what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to my recipe here. If your yeast didn't bloom, you're probably using old yeast or something that didn't bloom for some reason. The water wasn't hot enough, not enough sugar in there or something. I would go ahead and throw it away and buy more yeast and try again, because you want to make sure you get a nice batter out of it. So when it starts to come together, it looks something like this. It looks like it's not going to come together because it's just this gloppy mess. But as you let it continue to beat for a little bit, you'll see that it actually comes together nicely and starts to get the texture you want. Next up, I'm going to take a bowl, put a little bit of oil in the bowl just to cover it, so that way when I put my dough out in it, I need to proof it. It won't stick to the bowl. So I'll go ahead and put a little oil in there and let it go. Now I'm still running the mixer. It's been going on for about 7 or 8 minutes now. And now that I've got this together, you can see how it's kind of come together in this nice clump. That's what I want. That's the texture that I'm looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and take that out of here, take it off my stand mixer, take the paddle off, or the dough hook off, and go ahead and put it into my bowl. Pretty simple and straightforward. It shouldn't stick too much to your mixing bowl. Maybe it does a little bit. I had a little trouble getting it out. I used my fingers and a spatula to get the rest out, and then it's in the bowl. So you're just going to get it in there and let it sit in the bowl. You want to form it into a ball. You might need to get a little bit of the oil from the bowl on it to make it form properly, but what you want to do is kind of trying to get it into a ball so that it kind of sits together and kind of comes together in a way as it starts to rise. You're doing this proofing process where you're letting it rise a couple of times to make sure that it gets the right body to it. Right, you want it to have these little holes in it where it actually gets a little texture. And that's the important thing, is that it's leaving little gaps in there for the air to come in. So you want to make sure that you're getting it together in a nice mix like this, and you get it into a ball. So after I get it together in a ball and it looks pretty good, I'm going to go ahead and just cover it with plastic wrap. And I'll let it sit on the counter for about 2 hours. It's a long process to make this bread. Very simple, but very time consuming, because you have to sit there and go through the process for the couple of hours, and then you got to let it proof again at the end. And through the magic of video, we're going to let this skip ahead for 2 hours, and we'll see what it looks like. Once it's done, it'll be double in size, something like this. This is what you're looking for. Now what I want to do is take this and actually make some threads out of it. I want to make a nice braided bread. So it's important to go ahead and break it apart into different pieces and braid it. So my daughter's going to help me do this a little bit here, where she helps me braid it out a little bit. So all I need to do is use the spatula to scoop out 3 equal parts, pretty close to equal anyway. And I'm going to make them into little balls, and then I'm going to go ahead and start stretching it out and make the pieces I want to make, and then I can braid it together. So once I've got my 3 balls and they're about the right size, I'm going to go ahead and make them into long threads. You know, sort of like working with Play-Doh, right? Where you just take it and you make like a long log with it. And that's all I need to do. I just need to make it kind of even so that it goes all the way down and it's about the same thickness all the way through. And you just kind of spread it out, and eventually you've got 3 pieces that you can work with. So once you've got your 3 pieces and you've kind of spread them out a little bit, then you can go ahead and start your braiding process. Now for braiding it, what you want to do is start by attaching the 3 pieces at the end here. And this is where I got a little stuck on the braiding. And my daughter looked at me and she goes, I know how to do it on my own hair, but I don't know how to do it here. So she started to do it, and we had to work through it a little bit to figure it out. Not a huge deal. And it came out just fine either way. Next time we would probably do it a little better and it would look even better than this, but it was a good start. It was the first time we were doing it. We just kind of came up with this idea to braid it, and it was like, I think this will work. So we had to figure out how to get it under and over and over and under. And after we talked it through, it was like, oh yeah, this makes perfectly good sense. So you lift this piece up and you put one under. And you just have to kind of think it through. And if you mess up, you can start again. That's the great part about this. You can always just pull it apart and start again, right? So that's what's really interesting about that. So we figured out this one has to go under. And once we got it under, then we were good. There you go. And we figured it out, and it came together really nicely. And so we've got this braided bread that we now have, and we'll go ahead and attach the ends together here. And now we've got a nice bread that we can work with. So just kind of straighten it out, clean it up a little bit, make it look a little better. And now we're going to let it sit. This is the second proofing process we have to go through. So for another hour or so, we're going to just cover it with a dish towel, clean dish towel hopefully, and let it sit for another hour. After the hour is over, we see it rose again. And here's where we're going to use the rest of the egg whites we had from before. We're going to put a coating on it. We're going to put a little bit of water in there just to extend it out further, but I've got my egg whites in there. And I'm going to go ahead and use a brush just to brush it on. And all I'm going to do is just brush it on until it covers the whole thing, so I get a nice coating on there. Every little nook and cranny, because I want to get it all nice and golden brown. And I'm just going to put it together and let it come together nicely this way. So I just take my time and brush it on. Again, takes a couple of minutes to brush it on and make it look nice, but it is well worth your effort. Once we're done, we have a nice, really nice looking shiny thing here where it has this egg wash on it. And we're going to go ahead and put it together and make it look really, really slick here. And we'll get it in the oven in just a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and preheat the oven to 350 degrees. It's going to cook for about 30 minutes in total. What I want to do is cook it for about 15 minutes or so, turn it just to make sure my oven is cooking evenly, and then cook it for another 10 minutes, and I'll check it and see how it's doing. And if it needs a couple more minutes, I'll let it go a little longer. I figure, somewhere in that range, close to 30 minutes, you don't want to overcook it because it can dry out a little bit. But now it's going in the oven. We're going to turn it at the halfway point. Oh, that's looking good. And it smells so amazing when it comes out of the oven like that. It's this nice eggy bread that's coming out. So we'll let it cook for another couple minutes. And then finally, we'll take it out of the oven. And this is what it looks like when it's finished. This is a remarkably beautiful piece of bread here. And it really does come together very nicely as you get it out of the oven. Now, it's a lot of bread. I mean, it's 4 cups of flour that we used here. So we're going to be eating this for a while, but that's quite all right. And I can use it for French toast if we don't finish it. It's fantastic that way. It really works well. So here you go. Here's what it looks like inside. It's flaky, it's moist, it's delicious. Enjoy your challah.